Welcome to Insights in Sound, where we talk to the people behind the scenes, behind the technology, and behind the music. People you may not know, but you should. And please check out insightsinsound.com for a full list of our podcasts and YouTube series.
And big thanks to our sponsors, Mackie, Roland, Mojave Audio, Ozbot.
We are live from the Village Studios. My guest is Steve Genewick. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
Glad we finally got to do this. What's it taken like about a year now to finally put this
together? Taking a bit to put this together, yeah.
No kidding, yeah. But
schedules and everything else.
You know, we're all busy people. So let's start with a little bit of background because you and I have been discovering, have so much 6-degree separation. Well, first of all, before we even go there, you're not really a musician.
Not really. I was a really bad guitar player. Never really learned to, like, I didn't play in bands and stuff like that.
Yeah. Which I think is interesting because, you know, in one sense, I always thought the best engineers and the best producers understand the vibe of playing together with other people. Mm-hmm. And I recently had a conversation with Susan Rogers. Mm-hmm. And Susan is also not a musician. And she was telling me, she actually had this little passage in her book, too, about this conversation she had with Miles Davis. And she said Miles basically got in her face and he was like, you know, rapid fire questions. And one of the questions was, you a musician? And she said, no. And he said, that's okay. The best musicians I know aren't musicians.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And I thought, you know, you obviously have that intuitive sense of the process.
Right.
Which I think is in certain ways even
and
more
I
valuable.
think it's funny because people assume I'm a musician, because especially on sessions, because they'll see me reading charts. Because I can follow a chart. And that happened at when I was at Capitol. When I started working at Capitol, you know, suddenly we were doing scoring sessions and orchestral sessions, and I'm watching the assistant engineers there at the time, and you know, the tape ops and everybody, and you know, I'm watching this happen, and I had a basic music knowledge of music theory, you know, 4/4 time, and here's a bar and quarter note, half note, that kind of stuff. But I realized very quickly that they were following charts, and just to run the tape machine, you had to know, you know, the composer was like, we need to punch in at bar 32, and you had to know where bar 32 was, and again, I could count bars, but then there's a repeat and a coda and all, and I was like, I can't do that job, and that's the job I want, and I can't do that job if I can't follow this chart. So I went to my boss at the time. Michael Frondelli was my boss. And I said, look, can I have every Tuesday night off for the next 4 months or whatever? And he was like, why? I said, well, I'm actually going to enroll in a music theory class at Santa Monica College because I want to learn how to read the charts and know the music theory so I can do this. And he went, you're going to enroll in a class to learn how to do that? I said, yeah, I really think I need to know how to follow the charts. He said, not only can you have the night off, he said, we'll pay for it. So go for it. So I actually went back to school and took music theory classes to learn how to read a chart. Now I'm pretty good at it. I mean, I can't play it, but I can read a chart and I can sit and talk to an arranger and like, oh yeah, I see the little harp gliss in bar 32 that you're talking about, or like, hey, there's a passage here, you know, when we're recording a score or whatever. Like, I didn't really hear this cello line. I see it here, but can we bring that out? So it's actually been really helpful. Yeah.
Yeah. Now you did come up under people like Michael, but let's back up even further
Sure.
than that.
Yeah.
I know that you started out doing live sound, and then you ended up eventually getting a gig at the infamous Cherokee Studios.
I did.
Which that's my alma mater as well.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that. What that was like for you.
So I was going to a recording school at the time, a place called the Trebas Institute.
I remember that place.
Now this is 30 years ago or
Yeah.
whatever. More than 30 years ago now.
I don't think it exists anymore.
I don't think so. And I think I've heard of like 2 other people who went there that have come up to me and said, yeah, I went there too. So I knew nothing, basically. I knew I wanted to kind of do this. I had friends in bands and stuff like that. And I thought, oh, the sound guy, that looks like fun. But I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know what to do. Again, I never had a 4-track and recorded. I didn't follow that. So I was going to school and I was learning the basics, and the school was good. It's nothing like the schools are today. I mean, today they're really advanced. But I was learning what an EQ does and what a compressor does and signal flow and all that kind of stuff. And I was actually in a class. It was actually Bobby Osinski was my teacher for
Really?
this
I
class.
love it.
Yeah, and the guy that sat next to me in the class was the night runner at a studio called Cherokee that I had heard about, whatever.
We had a lot of night runners.
Exactly. And he came in one day and told me that he got fired. And I was like, what? And he was like, and he said, no, I did something stupid. And I said, so they're looking for somebody? And he went, yeah, dude, you should go get the job. And I literally got up and walked out and went home and got my resume and went to Cherokee and said, I heard you need somebody. I'm looking for a job. And I met with probably Rob at the time, either Joe or Bruce. I don't remember who actually. And they looked at my resume and they said, yeah, can you be back here at 4:00? And I said, yeah, great, I can. And then I spent a couple weeks doing, you do the 4 to midnight shift. It's an 8-hour shift. So 8 to 4, 4 to 12, 12 to 8.
Oh, yeah.
So, you do the 4 to midnight shift for a couple weeks, and then you get landed on the midnight to 8 a.m. shift by yourself, cleaning up, and you do that until you either die, quit, or somebody else dies or quits.
Get fired.
and you
I
get
think
to
actually
move up
with Cherokee, it's mostly that you get fired.
You get fired, yeah.
Mhm.
Or quit, yeah. Until you're not the new guy anymore, and then you get to do the day shift.
Right.
And that's how I got the job at Cherokee. And then I was learning more. I was hanging out. We had 5 rooms there, and I was hanging out and I was learning, a lot more at the studio. So I ended up not finishing the school because it was actually taking time away from being at the studio where I was learning real world stuff. So.
You learned a lot at
great.
that studio. That studio in particular, because, there were only 4 rooms when I was there, but literally every day there was somebody new coming in. Mm-hmm. There were new sessions coming in. Yeah. I got to look over the shoulder of some of the really great producers and engineers, and I'm sure you did too.
Absolutely, yeah.
And not to mention the technology itself, which in that era, it was kind of the transition era from tape to Pro Tools.
It was, still pretty. It was still almost exclusively tape.
Well, and Cherokee were among the later studios to make that transition. Right. They were very analog-centric for the longest time.
Yeah, I can remember digital machines coming in once in a while, a 3348 or or a Mitsubishi once in a blue moon, but that was still tape.
Well, we still had that. We had that first Sony 24 track, which we had for about a day, and then Dee went, "Get that shit out of here,"
Right.
Because those first ones really did sound horrible.
Yeah, but that was still tape-based.
Yes.
The workflow was still tape and all that. Mm. There were a lot of virtual sessions, like MIDI sessions. Like I can remember guys bringing in enormous keyboard rigs, and we had one 24-track tape that was feeding time code, and everything else was virtual.
Michael Boddicker used to bring these phone booth-sized racks in, and
exactly.
Yeah.
So, which now, if you wanted to go back, most of those tracks don't exist because there was never a multi-track because it was all coming out of the machines.
Yeah.
And then I do remember, like all of us huddling around a little Macintosh computer one day, looking at what was called Sound Tools.
Oh yeah.
And it was the first time I ever saw a digital workstation, and it was like, oh no, you can cut and paste. It's like WordPerfect, but for audio. You can cut and paste and move this, and we were like, wow, that's pretty. It was 2 channels.
Yeah.
And I distinctly remember all of us sitting with me and Bill Smith, who's still one of my great friends, like, wow, that's cool. Yeah, that'll never be a thing for us though. Like that's way too. We don't need that. We have this other stuff.
But it was a different learning process, learning on tape, I think, and especially with guys like that. D-Rob, rest in peace, was an absolutely brilliant tape editor. I've watched him do window edits on tape where he's just removed a single track and stuff like that.
Yeah. And learning how to fly background parts off of from a 1/4-inch machine back on, and you get it right. We got the first half. All right, go back, do it again. Let's punch the second half. It was fun.
Yeah.
Flying stuff. Then we could load into a sampler. There was I think the H3000 had one that had a 4-second samples or whatever it was, so you could fly in
almost enough for background vocals.
Exactly, almost enough for half a chorus or whatever.
Yep.
You could go like line by line and fly stuff around, and it was crazy, and it was fun though. It was there was something to it. It took a long time.
Well, and then they also had one of the I don't know what they had when you were there, but when I was there in the mix room, we had NECAM 2 automation.
Right.
With the big, huge floppies, you know.
By the time I got there, it was flying faders. There were
Okay.
2 Neve consoles.
So it was relatively dependable at that point.
Relatively,
Okay.
yeah. And so it was Flying Faders on Studio 2 had a VR, I believe, and Studio 4 or 5, whichever one that was, had a V. So no recall, but it had Flying Faders.
Ah,
So we had the big sheets, so you still had to write everything down. And,
okay.
and
We
do
we
all
had
that
4 A ranges when I was there.
We
and
still
that's-
had, there
yeah.
were 3 A ranges when I was there.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, the main, the custom one,
Which Bruce still has in the
which
new
Bruce still has,
studio, yeah.
and then there was Studio 3 in the back,
Mhm.
and I think
That was my
that's
room.
I think that's the console that's at East West now.
I
It
actually
made a
asked about
couple
that.
moves, I think.
I asked about that,
Yeah.
and actually, Candace insists that it's not the same console.
Okay, maybe it isn't.
I don't know,
Yeah.
but I do know that. I mean, I asked Bruce. We were there recently. We did a panel there, and I said to him, "So, Bruce, do you have another A range anywhere?" And he said, "I'm not telling." So he could have one
Maybe.
in cold storage somewhere. Who knows? But that original one, and that was seriously modified. I mean, they
Yeah.
lowered it and everything.
Right, it
you
had
know,
the low, and it had the little sidecar.
and it wasn't purple.
Right. Yeah. But I remember, I remember liking that console. And again, I was a
Oh, I
runner and an
loved it.
assistant engineer, so I didn't have my engineering chops to the point where I would be like, oh, that was great. I wasn't making records like that then. I was still learning. But I remember you could definitely hear a difference when you did something in Studio 1 and then brought it to the VR in Studio 2. It
Yes.
was like, oh, okay, there is a difference in these consoles.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of stuff that you could learn at a place like that. Where
That's it exactly. Yeah.
oh wow, yeah, that's really different.
And that console made sense. I mean, there was a signal flow to it with, a monitor section and everything.
yeah.
And that really, I learned a lot about signal flow through that
Sure,
console.
absolutely.
Definitely.
And learning to work in the analog domain, you learned a lot about signal flow and that kind of stuff, and gain structure and all that, which I still use today. I'm still recording on these consoles, but I'm mixing all in Pro Tools. Of
course.
I mix in the box, but the process is a little different, but the theory is still the same.
Yes.
You still have to, no matter what people say, you still have to gain stage. You want to do it right.
Remember,
you have
kids.
to do it. Exactly. It's more forgiving now.
Yes.
But-
yes.
But to get things to work in the optimal mode, you still have to do that kind of stuff.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
And in here, especially,
Well-
when I'm recording or whatever it is, I'm still using those same theories that I learned there and at Capitol and everywhere else.
Well, and that goes to the whole issue of how much are we using Pro Tools like a tape machine, which again
Depends on the
depends
day.
how you started.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it depends on the day.
Yeah,
If I'm in
exactly.
here, it's a tape machine.
Sure.
If I'm at home, it's console and a mixer and everything
Yeah.
else, and
Yeah.
an editor.
And most of us have a control surface of some kind,
I
so
do.
that we still have a tactile thing.
I
You
have
know.
17 faders in front of me.
Gotta
I
have
gotta
it,
have.
man.
I
Yeah.
just with a mouse I can only do one thing at a time.
Yes.
And-
Exactly.
and
And
with-
nobody wants to sit there a group and do all that
Yeah,
crap.
with
you know.
faders I can grab.
Yes.
I can't grab 10.
Well,
I
you know.
can grab 3 or 4 at a time. But I'm constantly,
Mm-hmm.
I'm holding this and writing this.
Yes. Yes.
Like I know the piano has to come up in the chorus, but I'm writing the guitar. But the chorus,
Yeah,
So
because
I
you're
love
still
having
doing that. I mean,
Yeah.
and that's the funny thing is that even though we had that automation, we were still doing a lot of stuff by hand. And I remember the days of like, okay, we're going to do a mix. You take those 4 channels. You take these.
Sure.
I'll stand back here and mute these, and stuff like that. Yeah.
Tape
Yeah.
and pencil marks everywhere.
yeah.
And because again at Cherokee, 2 of the consoles had automation.
Right.
The other 3 didn't.
Well, when I was there, only one did.
Right.
So even more so.
So
yeah.
we were mixing on, and then there were engineers who didn't like the automation anyways.
Yes.
So we still
exactly.
did that.
Yeah. Or a lot of times, there was one engineer in particular that I worked with who he would mix in sections,
Yeah.
and we would mix it, and then, okay, now we're going to mix the chorus, and then we'd
Right.
have to splice it all together from the 2-track later
Yeah.
on.
I worked with one producer, I don't remember his name, but they would record like an intro and like one verse with the band, like one verse, one chorus, and a bridge. And then that verse, they would sing the first verse, and then they would sing the second verse, and then the third verse, or whatever, but it was the same piece of tape.
Uh-huh.
And then the song was assembled in the mixing stage.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
we'd mix the first verse, put it on tape, and then Same thing, but just unmute the first verse vocal and unmute the second verse vocal and mix that, and then the whole thing would get assembled on quarter or half inch, whatever, probably quarter inch at the time, you know.
But now, to your point, that's exactly that to me is the other thing that we learned at those studios was technique, and also just how you can kind of use the creative process in whatever way works for you and works for the session. You know, there was so much of that. And I mean, you know, you talk about the people you came in under, you know. I mean, we both got to look over the shoulders of some of the greatest producers.
Absolutely.
And a lot of that had almost nothing to do with the music per se as it did just the brain. Yeah. The creative process, man. Watching Phil Ramone work. And oh my God, you know, it's like it almost had nothing to do with the song as much as it had to do with the artist.
Oh, he was always concerned with, I mean, I worked with Phil quite a bit, and he was always concerned with what was going on out there. Yeah. And the artist. And, you know, one of the greatest things Phil ever told me, I mean, he told me a lot, but the one thing when I think of Phil, when people ask me, like, what did you learn from Phil? I remember Phil looking at me, he said, Steve, if you're ever producing or engineering, like, he said, the first word out of your mouth is always yes. When the artist asks for something, you say yes. Yeah. Talk them out of it later. Figure out how to make it work later, whatever it is. Even if you know it's not going to work, just say yes.
Got to let them try it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You know, can I do this? Yes. I mean, it's going to take a minute to set up, and, you know, we might have to hop through a couple hoops, but do it, you know. And then, you know, I mean, I work with Don Was quite a bit now. And he's the same way. If an artist wants to try something, you just try it.
I believe Don Was must have learned almost everything he knows from Phil because he's got a lot of the same ethos.
Same kind of attitude, same kind of style of producing. And it's funny because people will talk about some producers and they're like, oh, well, he doesn't really produce. He, you know, they talk about people like Rick Rubin or Phil Ramone or Don, you know, and they'll say, well, he doesn't really produce. He doesn't do it. He just creates a vibe. And I'm like, no.
That is producing.
But also, by the time, you know, I mean, I was an assistant on some Rick Rubin records back in the day. By the time that band gets to the studio, Rick's already done the work because he probably did it in pre-production. Well, he does a lot of pre-production.
Yeah.
And with Phil, you know, we would have meetings and we would talk about the sessions before they happened. So by the time we got to the session, a lot of stuff was already in place. So it didn't look like he was doing a lot, but it was there. It was done. And he was paying attention, and if something had to be taken care of, they'll step in and take care of it. But, you know, you hire the right musicians, you get the right room, you hire the right engineer. You know, the records I did with Phil, we had the greatest musicians in the world. It was usually Al Schmidt engineering. We were at Capitol. We like.
What more do you need?
This should be easy, and it
success,
was.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go out there and play the song and sing it and do a great job, and that's, you know. But he had done the work to make it that simple beforehand. Yeah. So and you know, Don Was the same way. Tommy LaPuma was the same way. You know,
Tommy was he was a music person.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, somebody like David Foster's the same way too, but David's wants to get in.
He's much more hands-on.
He's more hands-on musically because he's probably helped write the song and he's helped do the arrangement or he's done it or all that. So he's much more involved hands-on musically than somebody like Phil, who can do that if you wanted him to, but he usually had somebody else doing that. He was hiring the right people to do it. Quincy was the same way. Quincy had Greg Fillinganes to do it.
Those were the do no harm producers, you know, as opposed to the David Foster's, what's his name? Jeff Lynne is another one. You know, guys who you knew it was their production right away. You could hear them in the production. Right. As opposed to, you know, somebody like Phil Ramone. I mean, they did so many different things, and you almost couldn't believe that it was the same person.
Sure. You know? Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm not. I think they're both valid. Absolutely. I love working with David. I love watching him work. Yeah. I can't do that. I can't sit and go, no, this you're singing an E flat. It should be an E here. But I don't do that. Yeah. But watching David do it is amazing.
Richard Perry was another one like that.
Perry, same.
You know, I mean, it's a different style. As you say, they're all valid styles. 100%. You know, it's just what works for that artist. Yeah. You know, and there are some artists who really want that hand-holding. Right. You know, I mean, I think about like Trevor Horn. You know, Seal's records would not be what they are without his heavy hand in the production.
100%.
You know, and that's great.
Yeah.
You know, really depends on what you want to have for that particular thing.
Yeah, and it's interesting. You know, I've done records with the same artist with different producers.
Uh huh.
Yeah, off the top of my head, I can think of like Michael Bublé's Christmas record.
Uh-huh.
I engineered all of the orchestral big band stuff for Bob Rock, but I was Al's assistant for all the David Foster songs. So I was actually, me and Michael were, I think, were the only people that worked on every song on that record.
Interesting.
But watching, again, two different production styles with the same artist.
Yeah.
You know, in the same rooms with, you know, it's really, and, you know, again, we go back to a place like Cherokee or Capitol. Those are the kind of things that you see in a place like that, like here at the Village, you know, multiple rooms, multiple things, like,
Yeah.
and you learn different styles. You get to watch different styles. I always joke, sometimes you learn what not to do.
Oh yeah.
I've learned more lessons about what not to do watching other people screw up.
Oh, absolutely.
Not that I haven't
Absolutely.
screwed up plenty myself, but you know, especially being a runner or being the third assistant, you know, the guy in the back logging the
fly on the
tapes or
wall.
whatever, and you're
Yeah.
watching, you're like, oh, I don't ever want to make that mistake.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And you know, it's funny you mentioned Capitol and Cherokee in the same breath, because in certain ways they were like 180 degrees opposed.
Totally opposite.
And you've been through both.
Yeah.
Now, I've only done a couple of sessions at Capitol. I've never worked there, you know, on staff or anything like that. But the vibe, you know, the engineers at Capitol. I mean, you had Christina Picari,
Pete
Bill
Dell,
Smith, of course,
Will Smith, Pete Dell,
Pete Dell,
Leslie Ann Jones.
yeah, Leslie. I forgot Leslie worked there too.
They were
you know.
they were the engineers when I started there.
And
Ray Blair had
yeah.
just left. He was kind of still around.
But I mean, these are
yeah.
a different type of personality in terms of engineers, definitely.
Yes.
And you know, everybody in that building. I mean, I actually was in there for a session. Christina was engineering the session at the time, and I made a comment about the near fields. I said, "Wow, these sound great. What are they?" And she gets on the phone and says, "Bob, would you come down here a minute?" Bob Norberg.
Sure.
And I still have a pair of his monitors
wow.
to this day, you know.
Yeah.
And, but there was such a vibe of real, you know, the marriage of engineering and production was so heavy in that studio, in that environment there, much more so than I think at almost any other studio.
Yeah, it was definitely a different place. So when I left Cherokee, got fired or left, whatever, however you want to say it. So I left there, and then I went kind of back. I was working for a friend's installation company, and I was doing lives, and I was having a good time. I was 22, 23 years old.
Indestructible.
Yeah, I was touring and working in bars, and you know, I was having a great time. And I was walking out of Molly Malone's one night, and Bill Smith was walking in.
Oh, I love it.
And because Bill and I were friends from Cherokee. And he went, "Wow, I'm glad I..." Now, Bill had left Cherokee and was working at Capitol, but at this time he had been to Capitol. I had been to Capitol, I think, once to visit him, and he said, "Wow, I'm glad I ran into you." He goes, "We got to talk," and I was like, well, "I'm just going home." You know, he's like, "No, come on, we got to talk." He said, and he sat me down and he went, "Look, we had a guy quit today at Capitol. He's part of the setup staff, but you should come get the job." And I was like, "Oh man, I don't want to, you know, studio was fun, but I'm having fun on the road and this." And he was like, No. And he sat me down and was like, "You don't understand. This is Capitol. This is different. That was that thing. This is," and you know, we're doing da-da-da-da, you know. And then he said, I remember he said, "We just finished the new Frank Sinatra record." And I was like, "What? A new Frank Sinatra?" It was the duets.
That would have
record.
been duets, right?
Exactly.
Like the last record of his career, pretty much.
Yeah. So this was like a month or two after they had done that record.
Wow. Okay.
And maybe 6 months, whatever it was. But that's when I was like, interesting.
This is a real studio.
This is different.
Yeah.
I had never been exposed to any place else except for Cherokee, which was chaos in a good way, because they had 5 rooms and all kinds of stuff going on. And again, like we talked about, it was the end of the hair band thing and the beginning of the hip hop thing.
But Cherokee was rock and roll.
It was rock and roll and hip hop and
every
sense, and it was great. It was really fun.
Mm-hmm.
But Capitol was different, and you're going to see string dates, and you're going to say, oh, okay, yeah. So he kind of talked me into it. I said, all right, what do I do? He goes, well, the boss is named Michael Frondelli.
Michael's a wonderful guy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You should bring a resume into him. I said, all right. So I said, all right, I'll see you tomorrow. So I went home, got my resume together, and I went to the building at like noon. Now, I grew up in LA. I grew up, 3 miles from the Capitol Records building. I passed it almost every day of my life. I'd never been inside, because you don't go inside unless you have a business. Yeah. So I walk into the lobby, and at the time it had the gold records and all that stuff. And I said, I'm here to see Michael Frondelli in the studios. And they were like, okay, wait. And they called. And he came out, which was, knowing Michael, it was kind of odd for him to actually come out himself. He should have sent somebody to,
Yeah.
And he came out and he said, you're looking for me? And I said, yeah, I ran into Bill Smith last night. And he said that you needed a guy, and here's my resume. And he looked and he went, wait here. And he left. And he came back like 2-3 minutes later. And he went, when can you start? And I said, well, when do you need me to start? And he went, can you be back here at 4 o'clock? Same thing, right? The 4 to midnight. I mean, they needed a guy. The guy had walked out the day before.
Wow.
And I was like, yeah, I can be here at 4 o'clock. He goes, great, we'll see you at 4 o'clock. 27 years later, I walked out of Capitol. But he went down and went to Bill and went, who's this guy? And he went, Steve, he knows what he's doing, hire him. And Michael came up, and that was my interview. Can you be back at 4 o'clock? So, and, I started back as a setup guy, and at Capitol, the setup, we would do runs and stuff like that, but we were also in charge of setting up the rooms.
Did they have 3 rooms at that point?
3 rooms, yeah.
Okay.
Plus all the mastering rooms and
But I know at one point they were, when I first went in there, they were building the 3rd room.
No, Studio C was already...
There was construction going on, I remember
Studio
that.
C was built, and it had been remodeled and was up and running. So yeah, there were 3 rooms. But that's where I learned about orchestral music and big band setups. And, so as the night person, I would take the drawings from the engineer, the assistants would talk to whoever the engineer was, or in this case, a lot of times they were the engineer. And I would get a drawing with a mic list, and I would spend all night placing the chairs and plugging the headphones and the lamps and hanging the microphones and,
music stands and
set up sheets. And I mean, sometimes some of those setups, especially, Capitol's unique, the 2 rooms, A and B, set next to each other, and the wall opened up.
So you could have the string section here and the horns there, stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, a 2-room date, we get 50 some people in there, rhythm. I mean, some of those setups took 8-10 hours to do by yourself, one person by yourself, So the 4 to midnight shift was actually 4 to like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning usually. But it was great. I was having a great time, and Bill was right. I learned more stuff. I had never seen string dates like that. I had never seen big band sessions. And at the time, Paula was the studio manager, and we would do 4 sessions a day. We could do a 10 to 1, 2 to 5 in that room, 10 to 1, 2 to 5 in that room, flip them around and do a string date at night and a string date at night. And it was, we were cranking. Plus, a mix in Studio C, and, and it was the best people in the world. It was the Tommy LaPumas and the Phil Ramones and the Quincy Joneses and, Al Schmidt and Jeff Emmerich and, the movie score, Sean Murphy and, Bobby Fernandez and all, the best guys in the business and women in the business, the best producers, the best engineers, the best musicians. And it was like, wow, this is cool.
And you had, as you say, you had Paula booking the place. You had Michael Frondelli running the place.
We had 5 people on the 5 or 6 full-time techs.
Yeah, your tech department was the envy of pretty much the entire industry.
Yeah, 2 proper mastering rooms, like with cutting lathes. At the time, Wally Troggett and Ron McMaster. They had their rooms, plus we had, the guys like Bob Norberg, and those guys were upstairs so we were doing catalog work and mastering, and it was a really cool place to be. And I fell in love with it immediately and was just, this is it, and then over time, like it happens, then I got to know Al, because Bill was Al's assistant.
Yeah.
And Al and I hit it off talking about baseball. Actually, we were just talking about baseball.
Yeah.
We were both big Dodger fans, so we hit it off that way. And I knew Bill, obviously. So when they needed an extra set of hands to log tapes or whatever, I was the guy they would bring in. And so I got to working with those guys quite a bit.
And obviously, you had a really good relationship with Al.
Right. And
as I said to you, Al was the one who he said, "Oh, you got to get him in here." It's like you got to interview Genewick.
Yeah.
So
right.
Yeah.
And so over the course of time, I had become an assistant engineer at Capitol. Somebody had left. I don't remember who. And it was actually Elliot Shiner that got them to hire me as an assistant. He was like, I'm coming to do a record, and I want Steve as my assistant. And they were like, well, he's not in the union. He's not. And he was like, I want him. And Michael was like, all right, I guess you're in. So it was actually Elliot that got me promoted to do that. So I worked a lot with Elliot back then. I was his assistant on a lot of projects. I worked with Jeff Emmerich quite a bit back then. It was, and then I was working with Al quite a bit because Bill was still there. Bill had an opportunity to go off and do some stuff on his own, and I just kind of slid in. It was like Bill was there, and then Bill wasn't there, and I just kind of moved over a chair. And we were off and running. And I was on staff at Capitol. Al did almost everything at Capitol. He loved working there.
He was a fixture there. I always thought he was one of the staff guys there for years and years. Until
everybody
Paula
did.
told me that he just loves it here.
Yeah. But he actually had a credential, a Capitol credential. He could open the gate. He had a parking space. He could get in. So people thought he worked there, but he actually was never on staff or anything like that. But I was on staff. So it was great for me because I had a real job. I had benefits and 401k, and if Al wasn't working, I was still working, and I got to do, when the Academy Awards would take over the whole place, I would work with Tommy Vaccari in the Academy Awards, and and when Al did a record, I did a record with Al, and then Al was really, really busy. So I started working with Al around 2000, and also at that time the job changed a bit because that's when when the HD systems came out and Pro Tools could go 96K, that's when Al was like, all right, this sounds okay now. We can use this now. So Al made the switch from tape to Pro Tools, which means not only was I Al's assistant, but now I was the Pro Tools operator.
Well, and
the dynamic changed. So the job that Bill had with Al was different from the job I had with Al.
Well, and I think Al was actually probably personally responsible for the acceptance finally of digital recording.
I think when Al said
it was okay,
then
the industry said it was okay.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Before that, we had used Pro Tools, but
it never sounded right though.
No, and
everybody was always like, no, I still want my analog
exactly.
machine.
And Bill was a really good Pro Tools. He was one of the early adopters, and he was one of the early Pro Tools operators. And he had a system, but we would fly stuff in and tune it and edit it or whatever, and then punch it back onto the machine, onto the analog. But all the initial recording was always analog. But when it switched, so then the job of being Al's assistant changed a bit, and we were getting along great, and we were working, and he was busy, and it got to the point where literally I was giving my schedule to Paula, because Al and I were booked 6 months in advance.
Sure.
We would be mixing, and Al would get a phone call. Okay, all right, we're gonna do a Diana Krall record in June. Okay, and I would get up and go up the hallway, and walk into Paula's office and go, "Is June available? And why?" And the phone would ring, and he'd be like, okay, yeah, you guys are doing a Diana Krall record in June. It was that kind of thing. We would schedule our vacations. Al would be like, I'm going on vacation here. Okay, great. I know either I'm working with somebody else that week, or
I'm going
that's
on vacation
when I can
too.
go on, that's when I can take some time off. So it was great. And Al and I did hundreds of records together. We worked together basically for 20 years.
Wow.
And then it was fun because, especially like the records with Tommy LaPuma that we would, the Diana Krall records and stuff like that, inevitably recording would go long and Al would start mixing. So then we would split. So then Al would go to Studio C and start mixing, and I would keep working in Studio A doing percussion overdubs or vocal overdubs or whatever it was. So now I got to engineer some stuff too, which was fun. And then there were gigs where, Al would get a call and either he couldn't do it or he didn't want to do it or they didn't have any money or whatever. You're like, Steve will do it for you. Go ahead, Or lots of times Al would do the recording, and then I would do all the overdubs, and then Al would do the mixing. You know, so just because budgets or whatever,
Right.
he would do something else. You know, there were a couple other guys at Capitol, obviously Al would work with too. So that would happen a lot. You know, a lot of the little Puma records were that way, just to save money. And Al didn't want to sit around and do bass overdubs, percussion overdubs.
Hell
you know,
no.
It's boring, right? So he wants to go do something else. So
Gave you a chance to learn a lot of stuff.
gave me a chance to
obviously.
learn a lot of stuff, get some credits, some engineering credits, you know, stuff like that. So it was fun. And the fun ones were always, you know, Steve will record it and then Al will mix it. Like, okay, to me, those, but then I had to be his assistant for the mix. When he's mixing the tracks I had to cut.
Oh, boo-hoo.
So it was like turning in my homework.
Did I do okay?
Yeah, I'm watching him like, what's he changing? Like, what? You know.
Oh, my.
But
That's actually great, though, because you
was
really, I
great.
mean, you had a teacher. I mean,
yeah,
who better
there was
in
nobody
that
better.
sense, you know, really?
There was nobody better. Sitting next to Al was the greatest education I could have ever had. You know, and sitting next to Elliot Shiner and Jeff Emmerich and Phil Ramone and whoever the engineers were, and watching, you know, I spent 1 year, I think I pretty much only worked with Jeff and Al, who had two totally different ways of working.
Sure.
Totally different philosophies on working. You know, Jeff, you know, we used to joke, it looked like the power went off when I hit play because all the compressors went whack, you know, and Al didn't compress anything.
Al was like, you know, move the mic.
Right, move the mic. If the compressor hit 3 dB, that was, you know.
Right.
Both of them made fantastic records, but they had a completely different way of working. And they loved each other too. I mean, there was definitely the admiration between them was huge. But you know, I mean, watching Elliot work one of these consoles was, you know, he was a magician with a VR or an 88 or whatever. I mean, it was VR at the time, but you know, but Al, you know. I remember one time, because Al and Elliot were obviously great friends. And Elliot was coming, we had been mixing in Studio C for like months. And Elliot was coming in to do it, right? We were going to go to Studio A and record something, and Elliot was coming in to mix a record and talking the night before. How's everything working in here? Oh, it's been great. We've been in here for months. Nothing's wrong. Everything's great. Console's working fine. You know. So next day, Al and I are doing whatever we're doing in Studio A, and Elliot comes in. He's like, what? We're like, what's going on? He's like, I thought you guys said you've been mixing in there forever. We're like, yeah, we haven't had any problems. Why? He goes, every EQ I hit is bad. And Al and I just started laughing, because Al never hit
I don't use that shit.
He didn't use it. So we didn't know the EQs were bad.
Well, you know, Al was like, yeah, just put a 44 on it, you know, and move it this way.
I mean, Al when Al had EQ, he hit an EQ. When he had to compress, he had to compress. But if it was stuff he recorded, he just avoided it because he didn't have to.
He was probably, I mean, the few sessions that I saw of his, I mean, it was like a couple of mics, and it was as bog standard as you could get to a certain extent.
But always great mics. Put them in the right place.
Yeah, yeah.
Again, Capitol, best musicians in the world, great gear, mics
but also
that work.
I watched him one time, and he would go out in the room and he would put his head right where where the mic would be, and he would really listen. You know, in that sense, I mean, it just was mind-boggling watching him.
And again, when those sessions came up, Al and I had talked about that. I mean, it was all planned out by the time we got there. And we were there, I mean, it was planned out days before. And then we were there 3 or 4 hours early, getting everything set up and getting all that. So when Downbeat hit, I mean, we were kind of done. It was, all the heavy lifting had been done already. We already knew what mics were going to go where and how we were going to set the room up and who was going to do this. And I had the headphones worked out, and I had, and it was all taken care of.
Pre-production.
Yeah.
You can't really put a value high enough on how important pre-production is, and that's kind of really overlooked.
Yeah,
a lot.
I mean, I've done some big live things. We did the Oscars for a few years where we were live. We were the orchestra, and we had fiber lines going to the theater and the broadcast, and and I've done we did a Paul McCartney record live broadcast. So we at Capitol we did a lot of those big kind of sessions, big live broadcasts, and just big sessions. Big orchestras costing somebody a lot of money.
Yeah.
You don't want that overtime on you.
Exactly.
And I love those sessions. And I've had people ask me, like, don't you get nervous for those things? And I said, you know what? I don't. Because, there's an adrenaline rush, for sure.
Sure.
But if I'm prepared, I'm not nervous because I know it's going to be fine. Mm-hmm. And we've probably thought out logistics of, all right, if this happens, we do this. If, we got extra mics and we got, So if I'm prepared, I'm not nervous about it.
You also came up in a live environment, which doesn't hurt either.
Yeah.
So
but even in the studio, it's all live. I mean, it's, again, you got 3 hours with that orchestra. You better get it.
Yeah, yeah.
Studio musicians, we got one day to do this. Go. Don't.
So how has this changed for you over the last few years as the whole studio scene has evolved and working at home more and everything?
Changed quite a bit. So, kind of around 2017, Al was getting a little older. Mm-hmm. He was still working. The work was still great, but he was slowing down. Not him personally, but the work was slowing down a bit. Sort of by design, by his design. He didn't want to work quite as much.
He was in his 80s at that point.
He was in his 80s at that point. And so again, some of those calls, it was like, you do this one, So I was starting to work more on my own, and he was working less on his own. I had been at it for a while now. I had my own clients, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. COVID hit, studio shut down. I had a little mix room at my house that I could do budget projects, stuff like that. People who didn't have money for Capitol or whatever, I could do that at home. So I had a little setup. And when COVID hit, we had shut down with the writing was on the wall a little bit. And we had started, the Atmos thing was in full effect, which we can get into.
Yes.
But long story short, I ended up with a studio at my house, working from home. And then Al had this lung thing, so COVID was a big deal for him. He didn't want to get it.
Yeah.
We actually came here to do a couple records because Jeff gave us Studio B to work in, and nobody would go in there. It was just us, so we could walk straight in, and they would leave the food at the door, and then we would go home, and they would clean the room, and so it had started to slow down that way, and then COVID, the whole world's got all messed up. We all learned how to work remotely.
Yes.
Stuff like that. When the studios reopened, I had an Atmos room at my house by that time, and they were like, well, just keep working at home because then the other guys can work in these rooms. And so I stayed home and worked. And then we got word that Capitol was going to close because they had to do this earthquake renovation.
Right.
I guess before that, then Al passed away unexpectedly.
Yes.
Unexpected to the point where I talked to him on a Thursday or Friday about a job we were going to do. We had a project that we were going to come up, and it was, I got this doctor's thing on Monday, and I was like, fine, I got to finish the thing I'm doing. We'll do it the week after.
We
no
actually
problem.
had scheduled him to be on this show the following week. So, yeah,
right.
Nobody expected it.
Right.
Yeah.
And that Monday or two, whatever it was, he passed away.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously that work went away. Not, tragically. And everybody thinks, oh, well, Steve just stepped in and got all else, a lot of Al's clients were retired and had passed and all that kind of stuff too. Mm-hmm. So he wasn't quite as busy and it was COVID at the time. So I think since he's passed, there's probably been 4 or 5 sessions where I can remember sitting in the chair thinking, I'm in the wrong chair on this one. Like this is an Al gig, and I should be sitting in that chair, and he should be sitting in this chair today. But if he was here, he would, even though he would have been 93 years old, he still would have been sitting in this chair.
And he still would have been
doing
robust as all hell, too.
Yeah.
I mean, one thing you got to say about Al, the guy had all his marbles up to the very end.
Up to the very end. Absolutely.
I mean,
the work was still great.
Yeah.
He got tired at the end of the day, but I get tired at the end of the day.
Exactly.
He was 90 years old.
Yeah.
But he showed up every day, and he was working, and the work didn't suffer. He loved what he did.
He loved what he did, and that always showed.
I mean, we used to have a saying: we lie to our wives every day when we say we're going to work, because we had a blast. We had so much fun when we were working. Mm-hmm. Look, there were times,
Yeah.
like
You're
like
working
any
with
marriage,
artists, you know?
it was,
Yeah.
I mean, you spend 18 hours a day with somebody for 20 years.
Right.
You're
Your
going to
work
have some
wives, basically,
disagreements.
yeah.
Exactly. You're going to have some
Yeah.
disagreements.
Yeah.
So it wasn't always peachy, but for the most part it was. And the thing about Al was, and I'm kind of the same way, he would get upset if something went wrong. I mean, he wouldn't get upset if for no reason. But if something went wrong and Al got upset, he would let you know about it, and then it was over. Mm-hmm. And it never came up again. Unless it came up. And if it came up again, you were in big trouble.
Then somebody got fired. Yeah.
Exactly. At least off his sessions, for sure. But he said his piece and it was done. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
I got it.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of the same way. And look, there were times when I got mad at him too. It was a two-way
I can't
street.
imagine. Yeah.
Well, again, we all, we spent a lot of time together.
He
and
had
it
his
was-
own way of doing things, and I can imagine
Absolutely.
that.
But 99.9% of the time, we were having a blast, and we were making great records, and we were hanging out with Paul McCartney and Bob Dylan and Phil Ramone and Tommy LaPuma and Diana Krall and all these. I mean, these people are fun to be around too, and we're making great records, and winning awards, and people love so.
Who can complain?
How could you be at Capitol so long? Why would I leave?
Yeah, exactly. Where do you go from there?
Where do you go? Well, then it happened.
Yeah.
So I had to do this earthquake renovation. Studios were going to close. Okay, you're all getting laid off.
And then, the consolidation of the industry
Right.
and, UMG and other four-letter words. And,
Exactly.
Yeah.
But by this time, again, we were coming out of COVID. Everybody was used to working remotely. Everybody, I had my own clients. So I just kept working. I now had a studio at my house, or I come here, or I go to East West, or I go to Sunset, or wherever. I literally just kept working. It was no different, I mean, people would call Paula, and she would call me and say, "Hey, you're gonna do this." Like nothing changed.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just the venue changed where I would go. And I miss Capitol. I miss the rooms. Because the rooms are great. I miss the microphone collections.
And
also
I
don't understand
just the
how
vibe,
can you have a studio and not have 18 U67s? That's,
Right, exactly.
How do people work?
What, you only have one C24?
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
We'll go get another 47 if that one's noisy. That doesn't,
Yeah.
Here it happens at the Village. It's great
Sure.
because they have,
Sure.
but they don't have 16 U67s. Nobody does.
Well,
So
actually, I think Blackbird might.
they might, yeah. But they don't have rooms big like Capitol.
That's true.
So
That's true.
So I can't wait to get the rooms back.
I hope that will happen.
It will happen.
It will?
It will definitely happen.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I don't work for them anymore, but I still know enough people.
Okay. Well, that's reassuring
It's
to
in
hear.
the works. The rooms will be back. They will be back to what they were, and I mean, I'm confident that those guys will.
Well, I
make
hope
it
so.
happen. Me too.
I mean, there were rumors about it being turned into condos and all sorts of stuff, and I thought, oh my God, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we put all the gear in storage, so it's all coming back. Nothing got sold. Nothing got
Great.
Outside of like computers and monitors. And
That
that kind of
stuff's
stuff.
expendable.
Exactly. So,
Okay.
but other than that, it should be back.
So let's shift gears a little bit. I want to talk to you a little bit about the Atmos stuff.
Okay.
You were an early pioneer with that stuff.
The early one.
Yeah, you were, and
For music.
well, yes,
For music,
and,
not for film. For film,
and
those guys.
I mean, immersive. Look, first of all, there were many different immersive formats. There were lots of different ways to approach this. There's a lot of talk about, this was a marketing thing, like VHS versus beta kind of thing, which, there's probably some truth to that. But from
certainly in the DVDA and the CD and all that stuff.
and all the different formats and stuff like that,
and I lived through that with Al and Elliot.
Yeah,
and those
tell me about
guys,
your experience with that when it first came in.
Well, I mean, the
How'd you
5.1
feel?
thing was fun because it was, Elliot Shiner was huge into it, and he would work at Capitol a lot. So I was his assistant on a lot of those early 5.1 records, and Al got into it, and at Capitol we were doing movies. So 5.1 and multi-channel and that kind of stuff was not foreign to me in any way.
Okay.
We had ways of making the consoles do it and everything else. But basic story comes down to where I got called into Paul's office one day, because that was the office. Everybody was there.
Everybody went into Paula's office, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And Paula was there, and Art Kelm, who was the chief tech at the time and general manager, and Pat, our boss, all my bosses,
all the brass
were there. And I got called in, and they said, so here's the deal. We're going to tear apart Studio C. We're going to make it into a Dolby Atmos room, speakers in the walls and on the ceiling and all that. And then once we're done with that, you're going to mix a record in Dolby Atmos. And I said, okay. Why? And they went, we don't know, but that's what they want us to do. But Universal, who was the boss, they said, we need you guys to mix this record in Dolby Atmos. Here's Dolby, and here's money. Can you do it? And being Capital, we went, of course we can do it.
Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then they left, and we went, how the fuck do we do this? We'll figure it out, because that's what we did.
Sure.
You say it's like yes, the Phil Ramone thing. You say yes, and you figure it out.
Exactly.
And so it was, okay, so when is this happening? And it was like, tomorrow
now.
We start, we're doing this now. So basically we took Studio C, which was already surround. I mean, it was a 5-1 room.
Okay.
The console did it. So again, multi-channel was not foreign to us.
Right.
But this whole
the object-based thing was.
The Atmos
right?
thing was totally different. We didn't know anything about that.
Okay.
Because it's a movie thing.
Yeah.
It's for movies. And the guys, and it had been around for probably 10 years at the time. So it was not new technology, but it had never been used to mix music only. This was a new concept. Now, in hindsight, Apple and Dolby and Amazon and all these companies, and UMG, they had, the upstairs people had an idea of what the plan was.
Yeah, it had something to do with dollar signs.
Yeah. We didn't have, nor did I really care, to be quite honest with you.
It's like, okay,
you're going to do this?
Do something
okay.
new. Yeah, okay, cool, whatever. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
I still get paid by the hour,
Yeah. And
so,
plus it was a chance to play with a new toy.
New toys.
Yeah,
New toys
exactly.
are always great.
Yeah.
So tore the room apart, installed it. While they're installing it, the guys from Dolby, at the time it was Nate Kunkel, was kind of our Dolby person. So they're teaching me kind of how object-based work and how the system worked. And at the time it was a external render. It was a film render on a PC, which is a whole nother world to me anyways. But it was very complicated. And we had a Crestron system because we still had the analog console. So we had to be able to switch from console to not console and do it was really complicated. It was 3 computers, out of this Pro Tools, into this Pro Tools, out of this into the PC, and then into the B chain and all that, and objects flying and moving, and and it was just kind of overwhelming.
And you're like, I just want to mix a record.
Okay, this is different. I mean, it wasn't, the mixing part didn't scare me. Not scare me, but the mixing part wasn't intimidating. It was, there's no sound coming out of the speakers again today. What did I do wrong?
Okay.
It was Maddie and Dante and networking.
All the networking stuff. Yeah.
So it was complicated.
Well, that's when our jobs became much more IT based in a sense, and a lot of us didn't really speak that language.
Yeah, and we were all learning. The techs were learning. Usually you go in a studio, people know how to use it, and you're there to learn. And there's somebody older than you who goes, no, you do this, and okay, now I get it. In this case, none of us knew it.
All of a sudden, you got to bring in a network tech who knows how to type in an IP address, and
I'm calling techs and going, guys, there's no sound coming out, and they're going, okay, and we're all trying to figure it out. So kind of fun, kind of not fun. The only nice thing is that we had some time. Like the record company wasn't outside of, the first one, we had no time. So basically, they put this together, systems in, it's working, okay, everybody left, and I had an REM record. And, oh, by the way, the band's coming in 2 weeks.
Oh, gee, okay.
Figure it out. So
a whole album in 2 weeks.
Yeah, in Atmos, from scratch.
No pressure.
No pressure.
Okay.
And I mean, I got through it. I think, then Scott Litt, the producer, came in, and there was a whole process to get that record finished. But that was kind of the first record. And then it was, okay, we want you to mix this song. Okay. And then it was, can you mix this song? And then it was, can you mix this song? And they just kept throwing me stuff.
And meanwhile, you're trying new stuff every time you do a mix,
I'm
assume,
having
right?
to make it up as I go because
Sure.
there's no tools. Like even just reverb. Like we had some 5.1 reverbs. We had some quad reverbs, an EMT 250, stuff like that. So again, I had been through the multi-channel thing.
Right.
So
right.
I knew 5.1, I could make, okay, we'll put one side of the 480 in the front and one side in the back and, stick this in the center and we could kind of make it. But, really the only tools were for film, post-production.
Right.
So I had like car park and, like the reverbs were,
Right.
tiled
Not
garage.
really hall,
So,
but
yeah, I didn't
like,
have plate. I
yeah.
didn't have large hall. I
Yeah,
had,
yeah.
all these weird post-production things that didn't do. So I was trying to figure out, okay, how do I make this work?
You're really making it up as you go.
I'm literally making it up as I go along. And then I'm running and I'm talking to the people from Dolby and, so, I mean, this is evolving over months. And, okay, well, here's what an object does. Here's what this does. And now remember, I have one room. I can't go play this somewhere else.
Oh, that's right. Sure.
How
do you even play it back after that?
Right. So, but they're telling me, oh, it's an object-based system, and it doesn't matter how many speakers you have because it scales high and low. And I'm thinking, this is great, but I don't know what it sounds like anywhere else. I only know what it sounds like here at Capitol. This room sounds great.
And there wasn't even really binaural rendering at that point, was there?
They didn't even mention it to us, really. Oh, there's this binaural thing, but don't worry about that. Literally, like we weren't paying any attention to the headphones, like nothing. Once in a blue moon, we put something on, just, oh, look, it's in headphones. So it was like a year or two before we even thought about the headphones.
Wow.
So I'm having to make stuff up. So I'm figuring out how do I get my Capitol chamber, whatever, my 480L, all the stuff. By this time, I was pretty versed in mixing in the box. So I had a rough template of mixing in the box, and I had my reverb set up and all that kind of stuff. But how do I get this into all these channels now?
Right.
This is this is a bed, and this is an object, and the bed can change depending on the room and how it's configured, but the objects don't, and all this other stuff. So I'm trying to figure out how this is going to work, but I can't go. Once in a while, Dolby has a theater across the street from Capitol, around the block, the Vine Street Theater.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
So once in a blue moon, I could go over there and listen to something. But now I'm listening in a movie theater.
I was going to say, that's still a completely different environment.
A little bit different.
You're still not getting the consumer's experience,
right?
Like,
well,
what's this going to sound like
there was no
there?
consumer experience because
Fair point.
People would come in and listen. They'd be go, "Why are you doing this?" And I'd be like, "I don't know."
That's the best part right there.
How are people going to listen to this? I have no idea. Like, if you have a home theater, you can listen to it, but who has that? Nobody has.
And who listens to music in a home theater?
And you can't stream it. I mean, you could have like the REM thing was a Blu-ray.
Okay.
So I guess if you make so it was kind of that thing. Like, yeah, if you have all this shit, you can do it.
All 5 people who buy the Blu-ray, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was like, why are you doing this? I have no idea why I'm doing this.
That's hilarious.
Again, they knew.
Yeah.
But it was literally years before we really knew what was going on. But it was fun. But then I would have to make stuff up. Like, okay, I can cascade these into this and put these here and these here. And so that's kind of how I came up with the concept of the object bed.
Okay.
So that was me figuring out, how do I make this? They tell me it translates, but I don't. But now I've seen it. There were a couple times where we could go to a post house or somebody did something somewhere else and brought it to us and to listen. So a couple things like that happened, and I was like, all right, I got to figure out a way to make this do what I want it to do, not what it wants to do on its own. How do I get around some of this stuff? And I came up with the idea of zones, and I didn't call it an object bed. One of the other guys started calling it the object bed.
You were a trailblazer.
I was the only guy. It was me.
Involuntarily,
It was me, and then we got Nick Reeves involved because we needed another person. And then eventually Pete Gonzalez. I mean, these are all Capitol guys. Chandler Harrod. Like, so eventually all the Capitol guys, we were all mixing in Atmos. And that was great because then we could have discussions and all this other stuff.
Yeah, then you get at least somebody to compare notes with.
Right, exactly. But I had come up with this template with this, I called them zones, but the guys started calling it an object bed, and I was like, okay, that works. In hindsight, I wish we hadn't have called it the object bed because it just made it more confusing for people. And now it's easy because, but I had this whole template that I had come up with that worked. So then I gave it to Nick, and then I gave it to Pete, and it would evolve, and somebody would come in and want to do it, and I would, we were kind of in this all for one for all thing. Like, this is either going to go or it's not.
Yeah.
So if we help everybody, then we have a better chance of it taking off. And it's really fun, and I like doing it, and we're all working. And we're all getting paid to do this, and by that time I was kind of like, I want to mix this, and they were like, great, do it.
So, and you were really kind of enjoying this as a new toy in
Loving
that sense,
it.
right?
Loving
because, I mean, the thing that always amazed me when I started hearing a lot of these mixes was not the fact that you could put stuff behind you. That wasn't really the thing other than a little bit of ambience. But the fact that you could really spread the image, you could get height out of it, you could get depth out of it that you couldn't get with a stereo mix.
Right. And with a film, again, so for the most part, like everything, when I started, everything I heard that they could play me was film music, basically.
Right.
With a film, you have a screen. Everybody's looking that way. There's a story going on that screen. Anything that distracts you from that story is not good.
Okay.
So very rarely do you have stuff other than this ambient.
Other than some like plane flying overhead or something
helicopter,
like that.
that's cool.
Yeah.
But for the music, there was some ambience back here. It wasn't, you could kind of spread the orchestra a little wider, but it wasn't, But as we're going through the process of them teaching me the system, I'm going, wait a minute, these are all full range speakers here. Yeah. And that's the spec for this. It's full range everywhere. So I can put anything I want, anywhere I want. There's none of these little dinky little...
For better or worse. Yeah.
You can do whatever you want. You can put it, and it'll stay there. It'll stay there. Great. So I was like, here we go. Now you've given me this instead of that.
Right.
Which I love.
Yeah.
But now I have all this. I'm going to use it. So I got fairly aggressive with some stuff. Now you quickly learn that not everything needs to be that way.
Right. The background vocals don't need to be behind you and stuff like that.
Unless they do.
Right. Okay.
So some stuff. I'm gonna make this big, and I'm gonna use this, and I had some crazy hip hop mixes where I have stuff flying around and moving, and when it's appropriate, that's really fun. When it's not appropriate, but it still sounded cool. I could do Miles Davis, Kind of Blue. We did the whole thing around Kind of Blue, which was a 3-track, which is where we came up with the reamp scenario.
Yeah.
There's nothing moving. There's nothing flying around. But it sounds huge, and you feel like you're in the space. The mixes that I've done that people comment, that I still get the most comments on, are stuff like Miles Davis, or I did a mix of Gregory Porter, Mona Lisa, which Al did the stereo mix, but I did the Atmos mix. And it was recorded at Abbey Road with a big orchestra and tons of microphones, because that's what they do. And I was able to spread this thing around. There's nothing moving. There's nothing. It's a static orchestral mix with Gregory Porter singing his ass off. It's a Vince Mendoza arrangement. It's beautiful. But I was able to fill the room with it. I was able to so you feel like you're sitting in the room with it. And, as one of my clients called them, there's no magic tricks. So that's just as valid as stuff moving around. If it's appropriate, you move something. If it's...
Yeah. The thing about those mixes, though, is that a lot of people already know them. And you've got this sort of preconceived...
That's the hard
thing
part.
in your head, you know? And that's the part that always fascinated me. It's like, okay, so now I'm going to remix Marvin Gaye.
Right.
I'm going to remix, these classic tracks that you already have.
Yeah.
90% of the audience already knows what it sounds like to them.
Yeah.
you know.
And that's the hard part, is keeping the vibe.
Yep.
But making it putting it in this new format. And before, like when we were doing the mixing, again, for a couple years, if you didn't know one of us, you didn't hear Dolby music in Dolby Atmos because nobody else had it.
Right.
You know? But we were constantly demoing stuff for people. I'd be mixing, and every day, I'd play Rocket Man 10 times a day. Because that's the song we always use to, and it still works to this day.
It does. And in fact,
introduction to
the
Atmos.
first time I heard that was in the room at Blackbird.
Right.
And I mean, what an experience. It's like, oh, so this is what they're talking about.
It's still what I use. I can explain what Atmos is till I'm blue in the face. or I can hit play on Rocket Man, and when the chorus kicks in, you go, oh, I get it.
Oh, there's
That's what this is all about.
There was an acoustic guitar that I had never heard before.
Yeah, there's a couple.
You know,
exactly.
But stuff like that. I mean, yes, that really does kind of open your mind to, okay, now I see what this is capable of.
Right.
And I have to say, the thing about that mix is, yes, you hear that it's immersive, but there's no like fancy tricks where shit's flying around and stuff like that.
There's a couple little things that, you know.
Right.
By the way, I did not do that mix. A lot of people think I did.
Who did that mix?
Greg Penny did that mix.
Okay.
So that was not me. It's
brilliant
great,
mix, yeah.
fantastic. Again, it's still the benchmark of that's what we play.
But that's it exactly. You know, that mix and several others like it are really, to me, it shows you what it's capable of, where it's not just a gimmick.
Right.
You know, and
yeah,
to your credit, man. I mean, that's, you know, I think maybe because of the fact that you had so much time to abuse it, you learned how to use it really well.
And I could learn what worked and what didn't.
Yeah, yeah.
And I, you know, again, we were mixing with no pressure because we didn't know what it was for. I mean, we kind of knew that eventually it was going to be released. I mixed a bunch of stuff that had no intention of being released, where it was, we want to show the artist.
Okay.
So mix this song and then we'll bring the artist, you know, mix this Beck song and then we're going to have Beck come in and listen to it. There was never an intention of it being released.
Was there ever a situation where the artist came in and said, oh my God, what the
With me, no. I know it happened with one artist in particular, and this happened down the road where we had already had Amazon and Apple, so stuff was already being released. And there was one very big artist who, it was, from what I understand, it was not presented to them properly, where they didn't get the Rocket Man experience, kind of. Because like I always used to tell people, because I found out kind of the hard way, like never play an artist their song. If they've never heard Atmos, don't play them their song first.
I could see that.
Play them, play them Rocket Man, play them something that's like let them get accustomed to what this is before you hit them with, we just redid your entire record. Because a lot of times we were literally remixing their records.
Sure.
Making mix decisions that they weren't there for and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So there was one artist I know of who it was presented poorly. They didn't like it. They rejected it. They had a fit over it. I don't know if they had a fit. That's what I heard. I wasn't involved in this record. I didn't mix it. I wasn't.
They shall remain nameless.
Yes. Subsequently, once it was kind of represented to them in the proper way, they came around and now they actually enjoy it. So it was just a bad situation of somebody got it wrong. But again, it's kind of the Wild West. We're all still learning. I'm not blaming anybody for anything because we all didn't know.
As I said, you know, the fact that you got to play with it for so long, I think empowered you really to know, like, okay, what's going to work and what's not going to work, and really push those boundaries, and then, you know, get the push back and say, okay.
Well, there were plenty of times where I would do something and come in the next day and go, oof.
I'll bet, the hell did I do here?
Well, or I would find stuff like, a part of a song would come up and I would turn around. And I was like, what? Well, obviously there's something that's distracting me. And I get it.
Yeah.
But it's still distracting me. So take it, put it back up there.
Right, exactly.
Like,
exactly.
You know, if it's bothering me, it's gonna, you know, or I would, you know, I still to this day, even in stereo, I always say I like to hear the mix through somebody else's ears. I like to put somebody else in the chair and go, all right, you listen, even if you're not, you could be the runner, or you could be the artist next door, or another engineer, like, you sit and listen to this, and I'll sit over here and watch you watch it. And with Atmos, it was even more so because I could see what people were reacting to.
Yeah, right. You can see when they look up and stuff.
Because everybody's... People are much more... You get more physical reactions with it.
Yeah, sure.
Good and bad.
Yeah, you get the cringe. You get all that stuff.
Sometimes it's like... Or they keep, like, turning... Like, why do they keep turning around? There's something that's bothering them, you know?
Yeah.
I had one... I did a record... I got a call. They said, you're going to mix this Cynthia Erivo record, who Cynthia's obviously, at this time, this was her first album. She had been on Broadway and done all that stuff, but the Wicked thing hadn't happened yet. This was a few years ago. And they said, you're gonna mix this whole album, but we want you to mix this one song first. She'll come in and listen to it, and then you'll do the rest of the record. But we want to get, and I said, that's great. I like doing that anyways. Like, let's get them in and get them comfortable and make sure I'm on the right path with what they want. So she came in one morning, and they gave me a song, and I told her, unbeknownst to her, she made the perfect record for Atmos, because there's so much ear candy and little things and background vocals and all this stuff. It's still, I think it's my favorite record that I've ever mixed in Atmos. It's Cynthia Reaver, I think it's called Volume 1. But as I was playing this for her, first of all, she loved it immediately. I played her the Rocket Man thing.
Okay.
It was the third, played her song. Wow, this is amazing. This is great. Well, wait till you get to this one. And she's playing me. This is a record that's not released yet, by the way. I mean, it is now, but at the time it hadn't been released. But she's playing me songs off her phone and talking about them. And she talks a lot with her hands. And she kept doing, and she kept doing stuff like this. And I'm watching her hands going, I have to make this record do this. Like, that's what she's
that's the
doing.
Personality, sure. Yeah.
So I figured out ways to make it do this. So there's, if you look at the ADM files, it's crazy because it's just green balls moving, but they're subtle movements. It's not, but it's things are spinning here and things, and you kind of feel this dynamic thing. Yeah, it's not so much that as you just feel it kind of moving around a little bit, and it comes from that thing with her hands.
That's great.
Yeah, so it's still fun. I still love it. Now it's a little different now because, now it's in the world. And and personally, I like doing new stuff. Like, the catalog stuff is fun, but it's way more difficult because usually you're trying to recreate a mix. And
Right. It's much better if you actually are creating it with that in mind. Sure.
Exactly. And there's no preconceived ideas about what this, I'm not ruining somebody's childhood by, remixing their song. And early on, when we were doing this, before the release date, at Capitol and at Universal, we would have serious discussions about their songs we should not tackle right now because we still don't really think we know what we're doing with this Atmos thing. I'm still wrapping my head around it. The guy, there were only 4 or 5 of us doing it anyways.
Yeah.
So, we would have discussions like, let's stay away from Bohemian Rhapsody. Let's stay away let's stay away from Pink Floyd. Let's stay away from like all the obvious ones. Like, let's not do those.
The stuff that's ingrained. Yeah.
Let's not do that because let's wait till we got a handle on this.
Yeah.
Till we think we know what we're doing, and then we'll do some of that. Now, some stuff got done, like, we did a couple Queen things because they wanted to play it for the guys. So again, one of the most difficult records I ever had to mix in Atmos was 2 songs for the Rolling Stones. Because they came and said, look, we want the Stones to do this. Can you mix a couple songs? Then we'll play it for them and see if they'll give us the okay to do the whole record.
Oh, boy.
So I mixed 2 songs for the Stones. And I would call, because Don was, who produced this. I was mixing I was mixing stuff.
Which song?
Heartbreaker and Angie.
Okay. Ooh. All right.
Right? So, but Don is the president of Blue Note. Don was. And I know Don pretty well. So I would call Don and be like, Don, can you come listen to this? And he would come down and listen and go, yeah, they're not going to like it. And he would, and this is why.
Yeah.
Mick won't like this. Keith won't like that. I spent the better part of a week mixing those 2 songs, and I never do that. But they kicked my butt. First of all, it's a 16-track. So there's not that much.
So
it's the Rolling Stones. There's not that much on there.
Right.
And then there was some horn parts and heartbreak, stuff like that. So, like a 4-piece rock band is one of the hardest things to mix in Atmos because there's really
not a lot
all
to
you
do.
can do is make this a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
So, and the Rolling Stones are a thing as the Rolling Stones.
Yeah.
When you start picking the pieces apart,
you can't pick the pieces apart.
No, it's the sum that makes them what they are.
Yeah.
It's how it all goes together.
Yeah.
The pieces individually, the sum is way greater than the parts.
Sure.
So when you pull the parts apart, it, again, not a criticism. That's the genius of it.
I mean, that's the same thing with the Beatles, same thing with a lot of those earlier bands where they really were playing together as a unit.
Right.
How do you separate that?
Yeah. So those were the 2 hardest songs I ever did. And then, I thought, this is cool. I finally got something maybe they'll hear this and they'll like it, and I'll get to mix the Rolling Stones record. Then COVID hit.
Oh.
And
Yeah.
they did end up, a couple months later, they played it for him in England, but it was COVID, so Giles Martin ended up doing it in England because that's where the band was.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
and Giles mixes are great, but
Yeah.
so my Rolling Stones stuff never got released, but
Oh, well.
but it was fun.
You've done enough stuff, I think.
Yeah,
you're okay,
but I mean, I got to mix a couple U2 songs for U2 so that they could hear it. I don't know if they've ever been released, but 16-year-old me was jacked.
Right.
I was sitting in the room with U2 playing back my mix.
Oh, gee.
This is pretty cool.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I've had a lot of moments, just a lot of moments like that in my life, just because of where I was. But
Yeah.
it's those things. It happens, especially at places like Capitol or here.
Or here,
I mean, I spent the better part of last year in this room making a Spinal Tap record.
And this is a legendary room right here.
Yeah. I mean, I sat right there and watched Spinal Tap recording songs. It was, and you have that like, how did I get here?
Yes, yes.
Pretty cool.
Oh, I know that feeling.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And
So
when are they going to figure it out? And I'm going to get kicked out.
Well, and that's the whole imposter syndrome thing
Yes,
that
which we all have.
we could get into that forever, man.
Of course.
But yeah, especially I mean, and this is the legendary Fleetwood Mac room too. So, I mean, you think
Among other, I mean, Al and I did a George Benson record in here.
Yeah,
We've done
yeah.
all kinds of stuff. And
Exactly.
this is, I love this room.
I love this
the
room, too.
console. It's-
I have a special attachment to this
I know you
console.
do,
So
yeah.
yes, indeed. I remember wiring it in. Oh my God. Yeah.
I mean, just coming to studios like this is still so much fun. And
It's true.
I mean, I got to see friends just waiting in the hallway earlier. I run into 4 people I haven't seen in a long time.
I was taking a friend through here recently, and Tina was giving us the tour, and we walked into like 3 studios in a row where somebody I knew was in there, and he turned to me and he said, "God, walking through this place with you is like walking into Cheers with Norm." It's like because you run into so many people that you know, and it's a wonderful thing.
Yeah. I mean, I was supposed to be working here this week. The session ended up moving, but again, we did all the Spinal Tap stuff here. Either in here, we recorded in this room, and then we mixed in Studio F upstairs. And it'd just be great coming in every day and see, hey, who's here today? Oh,
Yeah,
Nico's down, and oh, great, let's go see Nico. Come on, or people would come in and, because you run into your friends. Because with Capitol, it happened all the time.
Sure.
But I was at Capitol every day, so I would see people. But
Happened at Cherokee all the time too.
and now we don't. We're
We're all siloed.
We're all at home in our little rooms. I see people
Yeah.
on screens.
Yeah.
But it's fun to get out, and I still love recording. It's still my favorite thing to do. I just did a record that Don Was produced with Trisha Yearwood, a Christmas album. We were at the Warner Brothers scoring stage with a 60-piece orchestra for 2 weeks. Like,
Ooh, that's fun.
oh, so much fun. David Campbell did great arrangements. Then I took it home, mixed it, mixed it at home, and did the whole Sync DNA remote mixing thing. And now I'm going to mix it in Atmos. And so I get to sit at home enough. And I love mixing at home. I mean, my mix room at home is my favorite place to be now. But I still love.
But you don't get people. You don't run into people.
Yeah, I still love recording. Still my favorite thing to do. And it was Al's favorite thing to do too. And I love doing big band records, and I love doing like this big orchestral stuff, and I love doing Spinal Tap.
Yeah.
So
Well, you also had CJ in the mix too, which that's
Absolutely.
between CJ and the 3 original members of the band. That's high comedy right there.
and
so.
Rob Reiner, who's the 4th
exactly.
member. I
So
mean, it was great.
it's I mean that probably there were probably a mile a minute of laughs in that whole session. I can imagine.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I sat there. Mike sat there. Chris sat there. Harry sat there.
I love it.
We had all our
Yeah.
little things,
Yeah.
and we came in every day. I mean, we were here for 5 weeks recording.
Oh, wow.
When was the last time you had 5 weeks to record a record?
When was the last time you had a budget like that? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was really fun. It was, and we would do like a song. So we would come in and go, okay, we're going to work on this. And they had stuff demoed. So we had, so they kind of knew the parts and everything. And we would track it. And then we would do the guitar overdubs. And then we would do the background parts. And then we would do the lead vocal or however it went. But basically, over the course of a day, we would complete an entire song. I mean, not mixed, but... And it was fun because at the end of the day, you were like, and the end of the day was 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
It wasn't like we were 7 o'clock.
Banker's
maybe.
hours,
yeah,
man.
we were kind of working banker's hours. But we're getting work done.
Yeah, of course.
And, you work for 6 or 7 hours straight through, break for lunch, but that's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And
Oh, yeah.
but at the end of the day, you're like, oh, cool, we got another song today.
Yeah.
Great. And we come in the next day and pick another one, and whatever it was.
Yeah.
So
It's fun, man.
it's still the most
It's a
fun
wonderful,
to do.
fun experience.
Yeah, big band records are my favorite because instant gratification.
Yeah.
The band's
Yeah.
out there, they play it.
And the energy is just amazing.
Energy's there, they
Sure.
play it, and everybody goes, everybody good? No confessions? Great. We're done. Let's go to the next song.
Yeah.
You're finished with it. There's none of this, do the drums and then
Yeah.
send it out to the guy who does the bass, and then we'll send it to the guy who does the guitars, and
Yeah.
then I do plenty of those too.
Yeah,
I
you
mix
phone
a
in your
lot of
parts,
stuff like
yeah.
that. It's they're harder to mix,
Mhm.
stuff because nobody's playing together. I mean, it's a valid way, and some records have to be made that way.
Yeah.
But it definitely makes it more difficult to mix.
It does, and you don't get that vibe. You don't get that at all.
Yeah. There's no reaction, and it's fun.
Yeah.
It's being here with people and
Yeah.
telling stories and joking and
That's it.
yeah.
Well, okay, so that leads me to a really great place to wrap this with a question that I tend to ask a lot of people, and it's very applicable here. We're in a completely different world now.
Mhm.
We make music differently. It's listened to differently. What do you tell 15-year-old you coming in now?
Ooh. Well, learn the computer. First of all. 15-year-old me, I think it's, there's no, what I discovered and what I try to tell students, people, is you might think you have an idea of what you want to do in this business, and there's a lot of different jobs. There's a ton of different jobs. When I started at Cherokee, I figured I was going to be making rock and roll records for the rest of my life because that's what I liked. That's what I did.
Yep.
If you would have told 21-year-old me in recording school and as a runner at Cherokee that in 30 years you're going to be making jazz records and big band records and orchestral Christmas records, that I would have been, no, I'm not. Why would I do that? But it's fun.
Yeah.
And I didn't know it was fun until I was exposed to it.
Uh-huh.
And I tell people all the time, you're coming in, you may think you're going to mix records, but you know what? You might be the best dialogue editor that's ever lived. You just don't know it yet because you haven't been exposed to it.
You didn't know dialogue editing existed. Yeah.
Or a sound effects editor. Or, I'm sure look, you can talk to every single engineer, whether they're a music engineer, a film engineer, whether they do books on tape, whether all of them wanted to be Bob Clearmountain.
Yes. Yes.
We all wanted that job.
Yep.
We want to sit at the
Everybody
big console
wants to sit in the big chair.
and make records with the Rolling Stones.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what we all want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Bob gets to do it. But every single one of those guys would tell you that's how they started. But
Yep.
now they have Academy Awards for mixing music in films. And
Yeah.
now they have whatever, Emmy Awards for mixing TV shows. And that's
Yeah.
what they love to do. And they're
Or
making a living
doing
it.
Foley or whatever. Yeah.
Whatever it is.
Yeah.
But you didn't know it existed because you didn't know it existed.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so that's what I would say is keep an open mind because you never know what's going to come up. And I've been lucky enough because I get to make big band records and jazz records, but I also get to make Spinal Tap records and whatever else it is, I get to do a pop record once in a while or stuff like that. So I get to do a Beatles record. Who thought I was going to ever get to work on a Beatles song?
No kidding.
And I did.
Yeah.
So it's I keep the options open and have fun. It's a cool job if you can make it work.
True
if you
that,
think you're going to
man.
get rich doing it, you're in the wrong
Yeah.
business.
Forget that, man. Yeah.
But it's certainly fun. I always say it's either this or I have to get a real job.
Yeah, a little late for that.
I think I'm unemployable at this point.
We all are at this point. Yes. Yes.
So I have to do this, otherwise
Oh,
we starve.
well, you have my sympathies.
Thank you.
Steve Genewick, thank you for being my guest.
My pleasure.
It's been a
Thanks
pleasure.
for having
man.
me.
Thank you.
Sorry it took so long.
Finally happened.
Finally happened.
Awesome.
Yeah, cool.
Hey, I'm Daniel Keller. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and join us each week for Insights in Sound.